Deja on the pod. Woo woo. I know it's been a second. Since I've talked Homecoming and been on the pod in general, and that's because the writers are on strike, the actors are on strike, the shows were already on hiatus anyway. We still gotta follow guidelines, so we try to see what this is gonna come out anyway. But we support all of the actors and the writers' efforts to get fair pay for the work that they do. But anyway, what we're talking about today is Damon and Simone and their season 2 journey. So yeah, we're excited to chat about it. All right, I do this. I feel like at the top of all of my character like relationship breakdown videos, and this is the question I want to ask you: if you could rate Damon and Simone's communication where they ended season 2, if it's like thumbs up, way up high, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down, where do you think their communication is and why?
Uh, um, I'm gonna have to say that's a good question. I'm gonna have to go with like somewhere in between
Mm.
to the side and up
Oh, I like that. Why?
because I feel like what from based on what they showed us, every time something needed to be said, it was said. Up until, of course,
Ooh, yeah.
like the actual like her confession or whatever, whoever she's confessing to, we'll just say whoever. But I feel like Simone, they always made it so that Simone made it clear that she thought about what he said. She was still considering it and she hadn't given him an answer yet. They were very clear about that. So, yeah.
No, I agree. And it's funny because my first thought was that it was gonna be a little like catty quarter, like down. So it wasn't all the way down and it wasn't in the middle, but it was gonna be like in between those two. But
Mhm.
now I'm actually in the middle because one thing that I feel like I've consistently said, and you just reminded me of this about Damon and Simone, is that they cannot not talk to each other. And we'll see this even
Yeah.
again as we're breaking down what we saw from this season. But it's like, even with their relationship and romantic, I think, lack of communication and lack of like exploring what that really is, that they always end up talking to each other about, I think, everything a lot. And if I could say this at the top, and I want to get your thoughts on this too before we get into like breaking down the season, but I hear a lot, and this mostly comes from, I think, Lando fans, and I just
Ugh.
read something today where, and it's really interesting to me, but I hear this thought a lot that Damon and Simone do not talk. Like, say, Damon goes to Simone, and Simone doesn't go to Damon for a lot of the advice, and the life discussions, and the life talks. And I disagree. Like, I don't think that's true. I don't think, and
So
I
there's
go
let me
ahead.
clarify. I'm sorry. Basically, they're saying that when he needs advice or something, he's coming to her, but she doesn't necessarily go to him for advice.
Yeah, when
Okay.
it's in reverse. Yeah, when she needs advice, or even
Hmm.
just to talk about her life. And I think that is completely untrue from what I saw in the first season and what I saw this season. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that before we get into season 2 and like why I think the way I think?
Okay, so we're gonna basically season one. I feel like, and this is what I personally feel like the writers were leaning on a lot, and they built a foundation for Damon and Simone in season one. I'm sorry if you hear dogs barking. I live with 3 dogs.
We
um,
listen. We love pets on the pod. Go ahead.
they're upstairs, but they might make some noise. Um, but in season one, they set this foundation for them, like as friends. Of course, there was always like romantic undertones, but they set this foundation for them as friends. And I think that when it came to season two, they were always kind of like leaning heavily on the foundation that was built. The writers were.
Hmm.
So I feel like they felt like they didn't really need to like show us much of that dynamic going forward, because I think they felt like the viewers understood the type of like relationship and dynamic that they had.
Mm,
But personally, I feel like in season two, I'm even in season one, kind of. I don't feel like Simone goes out of her way to talk to anyone about her problems. Damon is always like a more vocal person. He's really not scared to say what he thinks and how he feels about things or express himself. But Simone has trouble doing that. So,
mm.
um, I feel like when they say Simone doesn't really go to him, it's just like, does she really go to anyone, or do people just happen to be around and they ask her what's wrong, or they ask her questions and then she finally tells them something? Because if they don't ask her anything, she's not going to say much,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So I feel like when she does end up talking to Damon, if he picks up on something or if he asks her questions, oftentimes she doesn't shy away from telling him how she feels or what she's thinking about. So I disagree, but I just don't think she's going to anyone. She's not going out of her way to anyone. And for the people who love and support Lando, I don't care. But but he always came to her. She was never seeking him out to help her solve problems. So he was just popping up.
I love that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like that nuance that you put. Like, I don't know if she truly goes to anyone, and I'd also add to that, and I'd say from what I've seen, I don't know if she goes to anyone, but if she were to go to anyone, it's one of three people. It's, well, I guess four, but
Yeah.
it's Damon, Amara, Nate, or Keisha. Like,
Yeah.
any of those four people. And I feel like, honestly, 60 to 70% of the time, it's Amara or Damon. Truly.
Yeah. That's true.
Truly.
That's true. Nate and Keisha, yes, she talks to them, or they'll like hint that they've had certain conversations or whatever. But I feel like at the end of the day, when she has like more serious challenges, she typically is talking to Damon or Amara, or they happen to like have her come across Damon or something like that when she's going through
Yeah.
certain things.
I think
They,
she processes it more with them than other people, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But I also love, and this will segue us into talking about, like, just breaking down the season, but just admitting the fact that for one reason or another, whether it's, Damon's relationship with Thea, or like the introduction of Lando more heavily in this season, that, really Damon and Simone didn't have that many conversations or interactions, at least as much as they had in season one, and that was, I think, very interesting to
I
observe this season.
I have beef. I have beef with the writers for that, because all they had to do, like I said before, they were hinting at things. But I think, based on what I've seen, because I'm not a part of many fandoms. Well, I'm really only part of the like All American Universe fandom, and then I
Hmm.
look at a few tweets about my other shows. But it's just fandom mess is a lot, so I just try to stay away
Ugh,
from it for the
girl,
most part.
who
Um,
you telling?
but
Why you think I've been on a break?
I have beef with the writers because they like I said, I feel like they felt like they had a solid foundation and people were just going to understand that. But I think a lot of people just kind of would like forgot. They were like, that's last season, that's not what I'm seeing right now. And I think people need to see things.
Yeah,
And for me, I have an understanding of what Damon and Simone's relationship is, whether it's friends or romantic, platonic or romantic, I should say. But I feel like for me, I would have liked to see them have like at least one study session, or at least one time where they were just like chilling, and not because they were talking when they had some sort of like issue going on or something like that. Like just genuine friendship type conversations. And they didn't really give
yeah,
us that.
yeah.
So
No, I agree. I agree. And so, as we get into, the beginning part of season two, particularly with, like, we need a resolution, episode one, and then, through episode three, me, myself, and I, it's really this back and forth, because obviously Damon was making the decision about whether to transfer schools, and ended up transferring just to come back an episode later. but you know, in between that time, a lot happened in between that time, just around them and surrounding their romantic relationship, without ever like actually, I think, really getting to the heart of the matter. But you know, he fought with Jordan, right? Like, don't talk to her about don't talk about her like she's property. Simone immediately goes to Damon like, oh, talk to me, what's wrong? I mean, like, oh, she go and look for Damon. So they
Yeah.
have to talk, and he's, you know, admitting, oh, and you know, both of you have feelings for the same girl, or had feelings for the same girl, and XYZ. This is what comes out of it. And they end up having a discussion just about what's really bothering Damon, and that is that he's trying to make a decision on whether or not to transfer, and he sort of talks that over with her. And then by the time he's back at Bringston, Simone has sort of taken on a different tenor, right? Because she's having trouble with the tennis team, and she's really looking for, I think, the sisterhood that she's not getting. Like, that's the beginning of her storyline with this whole sisterhood and searching for sisterhood.
Hmm.
And you know, she talks to Damon, right? And she's just like, people see me as the devil. I know. Do you think I'm the devil too? And he's just like, no, I think that you're a natural leader and people just expect more out of you. And so they're
Boo.
still like having these conversations, I think, with the way things ended after season one, when they sort of agreed that there was something between them, but they weren't going to talk about it and that was for the best and XYZ. But they're still having these very, I think, deep conversations. Again, he's talking about whether or not he wants to transfer, talking about, you know, his family, and then she's talking about this search for sisterhood. So, what did you think about them in the first couple episodes, the first three?
So I think in the first three episodes, they were finding their way back to genuinely being friends. They were trying to
Hmm.
figure that out. Um, and of course, him being with Thea was kind of, it made it more difficult because, well, that was the only reason it was difficult in the first place. But it wouldn't
Right.
have been as difficult had Thea not said what she said at the end of season one.
Ooh.
So
let's not
I
even let's not even recall that conversation.
yeah, so I feel
You
like
keep been coming from. I'm sorry, I had to do it. I can't. I'm stopping myself.
that whole, well, I'm gonna say it was like the first two episodes they were trying to like figure out where they stood with each other. I think by episode three they kind of were like back to being Damon and Simone. Like that's when they felt
Mhm.
the most like season one
Yeah.
out of the three episodes. So I what was your question? I'm sorry.
Just what did you think about it? So you think that they just found their way back to being sort of their normal rhythm?
Yeah, I think that's what they were trying to do. And then I'm gonna also add, because we're talking about the conversation they had after the fight with Jordan. And I feel like when he said the whole thing about, they do this a lot, but when he said the whole thing about like when two guys fall for the same girl, like that's what happens. He was expecting some sort of response from
But
her.
that's what it's Samoa just is like. I'm not going to talk about it. We're
Yeah. She
that's
just
what I
like
mean. They sort
never,
of just talk around it and never
yeah,
really
she never
address it.
wants to go there. And she's just like, not when everyone's moved on. And he's like, okay.
Girl, you know that's a lie.
And
Particularly for
he
the
didn't
two
say
people who
anything.
standing here walking. Yeah,
Yeah. And so
he
I
just let
feel
it be.
like by the end of that conversation, they were talking um about, the whole baseball situation. And in that moment, they both kind of realized, because they were still trying to figure out like what their dynamic was again. I think Simone realized I probably can't be there for him in the way that I want to be. And I think Damon realized there's certain conversations that he probably shouldn't be having with her, because at the root of those conversations, like it's just certain things that always brought them like closer to each other in a way that they just couldn't be at the moment. Yeah, I just think that they were like toggling that line, trying to figure out what they how they wanted to be there for each other. And even in episode two, I think it's kind of funny because after the whole disagreement she had with Thea, even though Thea hadn't really done anything to make the girls like come after her, after that whole disagreement, and then she had a disagreement with Damon right after Thea walked off. He came. They showed him coming to check on Simone immediately after that. Like
Right.
that was the very next scene. And so I feel like the first two episodes, they were always reminding us of how much they actually meant to one another, and
Mm,
they just had to figure out how to be there for each other in a different way.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And as so often with their dynamic, in figuring out just their rhythm, like you said, they fell back into their natural rhythm. As we move into episodes like 4 through 6, starting with the bomb threat, which was we shall not be moved, all the way through sort of free your mind to the mid season, which is integrity. We start to see also this very real connection that they have, and this romantic connection that they have, because the bomb threat is making them consider life, right? And
Mhm.
death and everything that's important to them. And I know that we didn't get as much in the dialogue of Simone thinking about that in terms of Damon, but that's because she was directly with Thea and they were still together at the time.
Mhm.
And so we get this conversation where Simone's talking to Thea and she's like, I want to tell Damon that I love him.
Ugh.
Meanwhile,
They
meanwhile,
they
David's
they
go
put her
ahead.
through such unnecessary stuff. Like it's just certain things that Simone does not need to be there for or talk about or bring up. Like she just didn't need to be talking to Thea about her love for Damon. But you
I
know,
agree, but drama.
yeah,
They want to put her through the ringer.
yeah,
And this was after, by the way, I should say, this is after, they had talked to each other about baby Shay because she was putting together that, like,
hmm.
birthday. It was almost like a birthday party or something, like going down memory
It
lane type
was
of
he was
deal.
going to preschool, and she was
Right.
doing a one of those what do you
Memory
those boards?
boards.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, exactly. And he was talking about getting to know his birth mom, and bringing his birth mom and his real mom together, which obviously didn't end up happening in this episode.
And the
But
scene right after that, he was talking to his girlfriend, and she never knows what to say.
that part, exactly. And that's the thing, is that, like, before this bomb threat, they're having this really, and it's a brief conversation, but it's another conversation where I point out that they do talk to each other and they do confide in each other, because
Mhm.
it's like, how are you
Yeah,
having this quick conversation about all of these deep things, your
yeah,
son's that you gave up for adoption, his first day of preschool, and then you're talking about your birth mom and your real mom meeting,
yeah.
and you're
Because
having
in
these,
that
like,
conversation,
very. Go
yeah, in
ahead.
that conversation, you can tell they talked because in that
Exactly.
conversation, she immediately was like, "Are you worried
They're
about this?"
so comfortable. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
so comfortable to share this information with each other. And that's why, again, it leaned into this elephant in the room that they continue to not address. And at the end of that bomb threat, Damon sends or during the bomb threat rather, but she sees it at the end. He sends that text that says, be safe. Today's not the end of our story. Believe that. And as she's reading the message, he comes and he's like, "Yo, Thea has something to say to me." Like, oh my
yeah.
God.
She read it after he walked out.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. I don't even know if he knew what he was doing when he sent that message, because if he did, he would have just got off his chest whatever he wanted to say then.
Yeah,
But
I think it was like an immediate sort of gut, sort of almost like a
yeah,
fight or flight reaction. Is like, oh, if I never have the chance to say this again,
yeah,
you say this. And so it was interesting because, again, it's like they're dipping their toes back into
yeah.
this again, sort of like the romance between the two of them, and sort of
And it was
dropping it. We see. Go ahead.
sorry, it was obvious that she understood what he meant by it, because
Oh,
if
completely.
you
That
watch the
face, that
scene,
look.
yeah, she smiled at the message and then she looked back. So she understood very clearly what that message meant. And I'm gonna add this too. I mean, it's more of like a question I feel like a lot of people have. But I just wonder, like, what would have happened if she had already read the message? Like, what was he gonna say next after he was like,
Right.
Did you get my text? What if she
Did you get my
didn't?
text?
What are your next steps here? And then you're still
What's
going
your
to
plan
tell
of
this,
action?
like, and then you're still just like, okay, well, I think maybe he was thinking, um, well, I guess it's not the right time or something. Like, she didn't see it, but she's going to see it, and then it's just another thing that they just never talked about
Yeah.
again.
I mean, and I think that's his version of like him saying earlier on, it's when two guys fall for the same girl and she just like overlooks it and it's like, oh, okay, well, whatever, she's gonna read the message, but let's just overlook it again. Like that is their MO. That's their
Yeah.
that is what they do. That's their pattern. But as this is happening, she is, I think, starting to hook up with Lando, start something with Lando. Um and nothing deep, but obviously just like they're hooking up, they're having fun. Uh and also at the same time getting deeper into this storyline of sisterhood and wanting to be a part of the sisterhood and being something bigger than herself. And she shares all of this with Damon. Now you would have a better idea of this than I do, but I was Damon not the first person that she said that I like want to join PKZ to?
He was.
That's what I'm saying. Like these are major things,
Yes.
right? I don't understand. And again, I'm pointing this out to say I don't understand where people are getting this idea that she doesn't share things with him because oftentimes he
She
the
tells him.
first
She tells him everything.
person.
She literally.
Everything.
She tells him everything except things about her romantic life.
That
And
that
the
part.
reason she doesn't tell him about her romantic life is because she doesn't want to have to get deeper about like what's really going on there. That's all.
And let's talk about that because he has a little slip up in this episode and he says he's learning to mind his business, right? Which is
Mm.
a lot. And this is in what is it 205, which is no more drama. But then when we get to free your mind, to your point about her not wanting to talk about the romance of it all, he goes to her and tells her that Lando leaked the footage. And then they have that whole mini argument about, Damon calling her hard headed because she won't listen to him about Lando.
People were
And
so mad at
Simone,
him. They were so mad
she
at
was
him.
so mad at is saying like she doesn't essentially being like she doesn't ask Damon or comment about his personal life. And I'm like,
That's a lie.
it's
See,
a
okay.
lie. Even
They
even the fact, even if he offers, there have been definite times where she's just asked and he has not offered, and he answers. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But she
Yeah.
has definitely butted in.
Yeah. I know she said he said that she gives him advice about Thea all the time. They never
So
showed
what's
us.
the difference?
They never
Right,
showed
right.
that to us, but that's what they said. And she said, because you asked me, I'm not asking you, referring to like her stuff with Lando. But I think what they were like trying to say, like, I don't put you in my business, like, don't, or whatever. I don't know. But
But this is, and I wanted to sort of pause here because she ends this conversation by saying like, my our personal lives have to be off limits. We did this with Jordan and da da da. Last
mhm,
semester and things like that. And I was just like, Simone, you don't mean your personal life, and this could just be a case of like writing
yeah,
XYZ. But I'm like, you don't mean your personal life. You actually, your personal life is the farthest thing from
even if
off
she
limits.
did, even if she did mean it, I think she meant it in a different way than most people mean it.
Exactly. What she meant is the talk about our relationships are off limits. And by what she really meant by that was the talk about my romantic relationships when I don't want to share
Yep.
is off.
Yep. Because she have
And
no
so she
problem talking to him about Thea.
exactly.
Please.
And here's the thing, because the next sort of real conversation that they have in 208, jumping to after Thea breaks up with him,
Mm-hmm.
and she has a drug problem. She's the one who just said the last time they really spoke, right? Personal life is off minutes. She
Mm-hmm.
interrupts him to go ask him about his personal life. Why are you dancing up
Yeah.
on some girl? Because
Yeah.
you have a
She
girlfriend.
was
Like,
she was
girl.
contradicting herself. She was contradicting herself real bad.
That's what happens when it comes to dating
Because
Sims for Simone
and the
Hicks.
thing is because Damon, like I said earlier, Damon is like he's really not afraid to like say how he feels about things for the most part. Except for when it like came to his feelings about Simone. But for the most part,
Right.
he's just really not afraid to like talk about how he feels about things. And
He's very
I feel
emotionally.
like in a
Yeah,
in the
he's
real
very.
in the real world, I feel like if you told me like our personal lives got to be separate, I'm not about to talk to you about my girlfriend. Like, why are we talking about it when you can't even talk to me? But he's just easily like falls into this like Simone asked me a question, I'm gonna give her an answer. Like, and he
And
really
vice
could have been
versa for
like
her.
I thought our personal lives are off limits. Like,
Truly,
why do you
truly.
care if I'm dancing with some random girl? Like, it's not your business. But she made it
That,
her business, and she always making it her business. That's why I
right?
don't
And
think.
that was without her. He didn't ask for advice. He was nowhere near close
Yeah,
asking for advice.
that's why I don't even think he be asking her about Thea. I think she just be inserting herself when the topic comes up.
I
They
completely concur. And he's just open about it, like you said.
yeah.
And then the thing is, like, vice versa for her as well. He then asked her what's going on. And she, whatever her definition of personal life is, it was a little bit different. But she then immediately tells him, again, the first person to know, I failed my drug test and da 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 da. Now I got to figure out what's going on. So it's like I just want. Sometimes I like want to like talk to the screen and talk to Simone. Like, girl,
Yeah. She
why are we acting like it's something that it's not with Damon specific? And I know why that is, but it's just like you just wish you could talk
you
to him and
still
be
gotta
like,
ask the question. You still gotta ask. Like
exactly, because
as
it's and this is very reminiscent of season one, which he was like, I need to put some distance. You can't handle distance. Every
but
time you say
the
you want
thing
distance,
is,
you don't actually want it.
what's funny about the distance thing is when she said it in episode at the end of episode 6 and they had that little disagreement. Um, the moment she brought up distance, like, well, she kind of went in on him and he kind of just was quiet. But the moment she brought up distance, he was just like, okay. He didn't say anything else about the whole situation. Even in the next episode, when he was talking to Thea and she was like, I can't believe you haven't said anything to Lando about it. And he was saying something about like it's just a rumor. And that's what Simone said. Oh, so this is just a rumor. So he heard what she said, he took what she said, but then when he saw like her with Lando at the end, he didn't even acknowledge it because he doesn't want that distance either.
Right.
So, and obviously neither does Simone. She
Neither of them want the distance.
yeah, I think I mean it's easy for them to have certain amount of distance sometimes because like they have busy schedules or whatever. But at the end of it, like she's not thinking about all that when she's going through something. She's looking at him like this is my best friend. Like I'm gonna talk to you. I'm gonna tell you what's going on.
Right.
So
And I
yeah,
think there's a difference between, because you were just mentioning a little bit of just about like the natural, like you're not gonna see somebody 24/7. And that's
yeah,
not their relationship. Like they don't see each other 24/7. But it's like these manufactured points of I need there to be some space between us because things are getting a little too closer to the elephant in the room, which is their
mm-hmm.
romantic feelings for each other. And so every time they get a little too close to that issue, if they can't just quickly move by it or it's not something that they can brush off, then I think that's when Simone gets scared and is like, "Oh, I need distance." And
Yeah, yeah.
it's like it's understandable because she's scared, but it's also just like, how many more times are we gonna play this game?
I mean, I get it. It's frustrating, but I do get it. Like the first time, she
Oh
was
yeah, for sure.
definitely
And she's so
she was
young. Yeah.
and she was definitely in a full blown like relationship, and her and Jordan went through a lot of stuff. So like I
Hmm.
understood, and I think that I think she for a long time I think she thought she like I'm pretty sure she knew she liked Damon or was like into him in a certain way, but I think that she felt like she had it at bay. So when she almost lost control that one time, she's like, yeah, okay, I don't have this at bay. We just need to like not. And
Yeah.
then now the roles are reversed. He's in a relationship and they're approaching this line that they don't need to be crossing when another person is in a relationship. Like you just shouldn't be having these conversations. So I get it. I just I want it to stop, and hopefully we're done with it going forward.
I agree. I get it as well. And I think what frustrates me the most, even though I do get it, is that it's like when something becomes a little bit of a pattern, it's like, when
Yeah.
are you going to address, like, the elephant isn't leaving the room?
I
When we
yeah.
go address it? And obviously, as we get later into it, the
Yeah.
very
I want to
next
say
big
something. I don't
thing.
want to jump ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it all kind of comes to a head, but I'm not really sure if people really paid attention to what it really meant. Um, in episode 12, when she was talking to Lando at the ball about how why the reason, like her realizing why it's difficult for her to make decisions, and I think it's like she does have anxiety, and then she also has
Mhm.
trouble with decision making, so it's hard for her to just go there even if she like
Pick a
feels like,
direction.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like that's those are two of the things that play into it. She don't really know how to make decisions well without being too worried about or consumed by what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's
I'm
why.
actually really. Did you like, you think that's why she puts the distance there?
Yes. And she also said things with him are like intense and all consuming. And I think she doesn't know what to do with like the intensity of it
Definitely,
in those
definitely.
moments. So it's just
And he's
easy
so
for
different
her
for
to,
her. They understand each other at a very deep
yeah.
level. I
Yeah.
I
Her
agree.
friend first. Even though there was like a little spark, he's been her friend this entire time. She didn't have that at the start with her and Jordan, and obviously she didn't have that with Dane either. So yeah, she probably just feels like it's a lot more at stake if she
Yeah,
does go.
yeah, yeah. No, and I love that you talked about that. I didn't know this was going to connect, but obviously, it comes to a head in 10. But as we get to her, sort of not, telling, essentially, like saying, like, I just essentially struggle with decision making, but she said it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Obviously, in 210, they kiss. We think they kiss, right, at first,
Mm-hmm.
and it ends up turns out they actually slept together that night. And this was after Damon's dad died, and she reads his dad's letter, and she's like going to look for him and comfort him and all of these things. And then the episode after that, we see Simone, after avoiding Damon, make a very firm decision, right? Because she took the time to process her feelings. She was avoiding him to take that time to process her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And we see her make a decision and a
I'm
firm
not
one.
gonna
And
lie.
I
I, I'm not gonna lie to
don't.
you. I don't even think she was trying to process it. I think she was trying to just ignore it. And then when he actually found her, it was
She was
like
like, ah,
it was
there you
like,
go.
okay, I can't avoid this anymore. And I think also because the Yardiac thing, like the possibility that it might be about them, like she realized, oh yeah, I can't actually avoid this. But
Yeah, you listen. You stop. Yeah,
yeah, I don't think she was
that's
trying to think about it. Like,
whether she wanted to or not. She processed her feelings.
yeah.
And but I also feel like I don't think on a conscious level she was trying to process her feelings, but I feel like after an experience like that where they did sleep together, what did she tell Nate? She said it meant something. So I also feel like that, because it meant something, and even if she couldn't verbalize yet right after it happened that it meant something, it did mean something to her. So it almost like forced her into that, even if she was like still trying to avoid it and all
Yeah.
of this stuff, that like there was sort of unconsciously like her like, I can't sort of run away from this anymore. And she tried to put back on the brother shoes, do it again, but it was just like, I can't. And so when it was everything that was happening in that episode with the yard yak post and with her talking to Nate, like she finally, and then obviously Damon coming to find her, she finally did process it for real.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to Nate, and I think it's been in the entire series, I'm not going to say the top, but it's been one of her more decisive moments in the
Yeah.
series where she was just so firm in saying like the kiss meant something, and like I want to see where this could go. Like I really want to give us a shot. And then obviously we already know David was ready to go. David been ready to go for real, for real.
Yeah.
But then we get Jr. and Nate sabotaging, which that sort of came out of nowhere, and that's still I think a story device and plot point where I'm like, was this, something out of convenience for the sake of sort of elongating it even further, or
Yeah.
what was the overall point? Because then it just like shifts, and
That was
obviously
the
they don't.
only point.
It was the only.
That was
It
the
was the
only
only
point.
point at which they brought this up. It
Because
sort of never came up again, except,
yeah,
oh, if I had known XYZ, then I wouldn't have. But it was just like, but you, JR and Nate, like at the time, felt
because
super strongly about keeping them apart. And then
it was
after
supposed
it
to
was
come
just like,
back up.
oh,
It was supposed to
say
come
that
back.
again.
It was supposed to come back up. They were
I
not
think
supposed to get away with it. They were not supposed to get away with plotting
so.
against their friends. I'm still so sour about it. But
That's what I'm saying. It just felt, and for how it was handled after that episode, it really felt like that shouldn't have even been a plot point, because I think it all hinged on this. If you could suspend your belief to actually think that Jr. and Nate thought, oh, these feelings aren't real for them, that didn't make sense because we watched a whole season and a half of
yeah.
both
And
JR and Nate understanding very clearly that they actually really did have real feelings for each other.
yeah. And honestly, well, JR definitely knew. He said multiple times. He said he alluded to it multiple times in season one. And then with Nate too, but she brought it
Yeah,
up.
Nate,
She brought it
listen, Nate
less.
with
But the
she
thing
brought
with
it up
Nate,
less, but Nate and Keisha
very well.
deep in
Yeah,
them Jordan days, and they knew, she was, married at one time, and she
yeah,
was still serious with Jordan, right? Was just like, oh, you and this man, and so I think that they figured out it was something real. I think even maybe before Simone
yeah.
admitted it to herself.
Here's the thing, and I think this is why it made well. It's there's that they knew, but I think also another reason why it upset people, including me, so much is because it gave they were thinking more about themselves.
One
Um,
thousand percent. So
because
selfish, and like not even for a particular reason, because it's like you just watch Damon and Thea go out and you ain't have no problem with that.
yeah, exactly. And it's like okay, but there's a few things. Obviously, everyone has to be aware that Damon and Simone are the pillars of the friend group. They would not all be a friend group if it was not for the two of them. So
Facts.
I can understand. Part of me can understand being like, "Ooh, if something goes wrong, um, it
It
could,
might fracture the
it
group.
could affect some things." But I
Right.
think they don't. They can still maintain their friendships regardless. If Damon and Simone don't work out, like it's just not for you to be so afraid of and concerned about. Like that just doesn't make sense. Um, but also I think for Nate, not I sometimes I just think really deeply about things, and I might be giving characters too much credit, but I feel like because they had said something when they had their conversation about the last time. Hold on, sorry. The last time they had like a issue with a relationship, and it happened to involve the friend group. It was because Nico got brought up at the last family dinner, and part of me thinks that Nate was kind of like, I don't want to have to like go through something like that again, or maybe, but
I listen. I wish I wish they had leaned more into that story the way that
yeah,
you're explaining it, because if that really is the case, because I think it would give at least a little bit of credence to what they
yeah,
were doing.
And
But
Jr.
really, yeah, JR just that was interesting too. But I think also with Nate, it it just felt so random.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, one more.
and I think one of the things that bothered me, and that I'll let you go back onto your point. One of the things that bothered me highly when I saw this in real time was the fact that, they're talking about, we just got our friendship, or we just got the group back, we just got our family back, and we don't want it to be fractured again. I'm like, back? Back? Y'all ain't been hanging out all season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Y'all ain't been hanging out since season one, if we being real. So what
Yeah.
you talking about back?
Yeah, the moment Damon and Simone had their little thing in season one, it kind of made it a little sticky for them all. But the reason why they weren't able to like hang out like together for family dinners wasn't because of relationships. It was because Amara didn't want to have family dinners at her place anymore. And what doesn't make sense to me is that if they really wanted to hang out all together, they could have still scheduled time. They just would have had in their
Truly,
own. They
truly.
like that's just what
What
never
is
made.
stopping you from picking up a phone?
Yeah, because literally all of them stay in the same dorm except Jr. And Jr. spends most of his time at the dorm too. So like y'all could have found time. Y'all could have found time if y'all really.
Basically, what we're saying is this made no sense. This
Yeah,
made
it
no
just
sense.
it didn't. But I will say, and this is another revelation I came to like a while back. Um, I get it. Nate is kind of like a messy person. If we're being
Oh yeah,
honest, I don't think people realized it before all of this stuff happened with Damon and Simone. But Nate makes jokes and makes light of a lot of situations unless they are her own,
I
or if
agree.
it has something to do with Keisha. She's very like her and Keisha are very protective of each other in a way they're not protective of Simone. But we ain't gonna talk about that. Um, but I think one, Nate's messy already, and two, it still wasn't her place to like judge either of their state of minds. But when she did see Damon before she went to talk to JR, I think Damon did seem, I mean, he was very like clear headed and almost like ethereal. And I think that was very odd for Nate because like your dad just died. Why are you so happy to be doing this thing? Like I don't think Nate understood. And she was like, "Yeah, this is
Yeah,
weird. I don't understand it. So it probably just doesn't need to happen at all because it doesn't make sense to me." But Nate needs to stop trying to determine what makes sense and what
for other
doesn't.
people.
But
Yeah,
I think she was concerned, but I just he said what he said and he was very clear about what he was saying. It just she didn't take
and at the very
it very.
least, I think that she should have, just like when I think it was Jr. and Damon found her before she told Keisha and Simone about dating Nico. And she was so upset, and she said, "Don't say anything." And she got really upset. And so it's coming back to this a couple of episodes later. Why are you not giving the same amount of grace and respect that you demanded from others that we just saw? And so that's just something that I
Yeah.
didn't appreciate. But she ended up coming around when she realized that it was real, and when she realized they slept together. And this was
Uh,
after Damon had confessed his love for Simone and said that he loved her, since he stole her phone, and that
it was the switch up was so crazy. It was crazy because literally episode 11 you were like, "Nah, y'all shouldn't do this." And then in episode 13 you're like, "Oh, give me the tea."
she
Like,
came
what
to her senses. She
I was
came to her
like,
senses.
"Are you
That's
serious?"
all I
Like,
chalk it up to because I was mad.
oh, yeah, it was a time. That was a
It was
time.
a time.
My gosh.
It was a time.
Episodes 10, 11, and 12 was like the craziest 3 episode
Yeah.
run.
I agree. I agree. And then it's sort of just, I feel like it's sort of just like faltered out a little bit, because then we have Simone, back to your point a couple of minutes ago where you said, like, she said didn't know if, she was ready for this intense and all consuming conversation. You were ready 2 episodes ago and seemed very confident in that fact. You want to know
Yeah.
now.
But yeah,
After she didn't give a response to him, and then in 14 and 15, it's really like not that they dropped the story, but literally no movement was made, and it sort of became this it to me, for me, myself, and I, it felt like this forced triangle that didn't really
yes,
fit
yes,
between episodes 213 and 215, because Simone again looked the most assured I have ever seen her, in 211, when she said that she was ready to start something with Damon. And, this person that she said, basically to Lando, like, I'm not worried about you, I'm worried about me, a couple
yeah,
episodes ago at the same rate, is now suddenly in a very short period of time being like, oh, maybe I should pursue things. So I don't know. The end of the season for me didn't live up to what that arc of 210 to
yeah.
212 gave us.
So I think there are definitely like some inconsistencies with the writing there, probably, but more so because they wanted to prolong her decision.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
agree. That was the only reason. But
but
it just felt forced. There was no
yeah,
like,
it was definitely forced because literally there was a 2 episode love triangle and it was barely a love triangle in my opinion. The whole it was never really a love triangle for me because she already made her decision. Um, but I think where it's a little bit different for like what she said in 211 versus what she said in 213, where she was saying it meant something, but she said, I don't know what, but it definitely meant something. We'll just figure out the rest together. And I
right.
think I think even in that moment, like her and Damon were both very clear that it meant something. But even when Damon had talked to JR about it, he was like, nothing feels more right than her. I think I'm going to tell her that she's the one for me. And I think the what they were saying was like they were both acknowledging the feelings for the first time, really, but
And they
they
were
were kind of
intense and they were
on
deep.
they were on two different levels. Like I feel like Damon was like on a completely different level than Simone was.
That's
She was
true.
just she was ready to figure it out, but she didn't necessarily know what that meant. Like Damon was ready to go all the way there. So I think when he told her that he loves her and he's loved her this entire time, she was like, "Oh, like he's for real, for real. Like this is more than just
Mm,
taking time to figure something out. This is like I'm in this or I'm not." And she didn't know if she was ready to like be that deep into something again. That's
I
what
love
I
that perspective.
that's what I feel.
Yeah,
So,
no, and I think that's super valid.
yeah. And then also she had said the whole like wanting to figure it out before Nate had brought up the whole like what did she say? She said something about Thea. Simone didn't really care that much about Thea because she brought Thea up earlier.
Mhm.
She didn't care. Did she say something about her pledging PKZ, and that was bullshit. Like there's ways
Right.
around. I had friends who pledged. There's ways around all of that stuff. That ain't no big thing. And the other
Right.
thing she said was what else did she say? Um about his
Hmm.
dad just dying. It was about
Oh, yeah.
I think I think honestly I think that Simone had kind of forgotten about that part.
His dad died.
Unintentionally, but honestly, I think Damon kind of forgot about it too, or he wasn't really acknowledging it because the whole episode 11. I mean, people were saying stuff to Damon about how like he was grieving, and he was like, "I don't want grief to be like this thing that's controlling me." But I think Simone had kind of forgotten. Like I, once they kissed and all the other stuff happened, I don't think she was thinking like, "Oh, we did do
They
this,"
were in a euphoric state.
and his dad literally just died. So I think she was literally like, when Nate brought it up to her, she was like, "Oh yeah."
Oh. Oh, that did
I
happen.
think she was like, "Oh yeah," and then when her and Damon talked, she was like, "I was just being there." But I think she always poses it as a question in the end, rather than just saying how she feels about something. She'll be like, "Well, I'm gonna see what you say first." But they both kind of do the same. They need to stop. But I think it was just like she didn't. She kind of forgot that that was like. what sparked the entire moment in the first place. And so I think she just wanted to
Yeah,
take
I
time.
definitely think it wasn't like a pressing thought
Yeah.
for why they shouldn't be together when she had first
Yeah.
decided in 11.
Yeah. So then she decided, like, okay, let's take a step back and let me think. And then on top of him being so sure about how he felt, she knew you can't be like, okay, like let's just figure it, like that's just very anticlimactic. Like if you're gonna confess your love to someone or confess you want to be with somebody, like it's gotta be the real thing. And she knew that what he said to her was the real thing. And she had when she was ready, she was gonna have to say the real thing back. So
And she ended this season right on that cliffhanger and saying, you know, what did she say? Like, thank you for your patience,
she
something
said
like that.
say before you say anything, sorry it took me so long.
Sorry it took me so long. Sorry it took me so long, but
But I know who I want now. It's you.
yeah, yeah, which was I think in and of
I hate
itself a little
I hate
anticlimactic.
that.
I didn't like those lines.
I don't like
As you saw, I tried to forget them. I said, "What did she say? Thank you for your patience." Um,
yeah.
so it ended on that note, and as we hop into obviously the biggest question that we got the most is like, who do we think Simone picked? And also, who do you think she genuinely prefers? Is that different from who she picked?
I don't think it's different. Um, I'm like 95% sure it's Damon. The only 5%
Is because of the
I
recent news,
don't.
the news.
Yes, kind of. Okay, no, because if they can't pay Peyton to be co-lead, they can't pay Martin to be in that show. Like, let's be for real. But um I think the other 5%, like let's just say we didn't get that news. The other like small percentage of me that thinks it could be Lando is just because writers like to play games sometimes.
Yeah, and fan reaction to Lando has been
Y-
very
Yeah. But
effusive.
and like people will say, like she's all smiley and happy and whatever with him, but that's
A
because
surface.
yeah, like their relationship is like very surface level and she's made it a
She does
point.
not care about that man.
Yeah, she's made it a point to keep it that way. There was never a time where she went to check up on him and see how he was doing.
She
He,
literally said, "I'm not worried about you" to his
yeah,
face.
yeah, she literally, yeah. She said, I ain't finna focus on you, I'm finna focus on me. And
On me, myself,
also,
and I. Yeah, sorry, go
also,
ahead.
uh, but no, for real. I, another thing, the why I strongly believe it's Damon is because you can't have a grand love confession for someone that you don't like that. Like they're not making us wait until the start of another season for her to be telling someone she's picking them and she don't even love them.
Yeah, and
It
like,
can't it can't be a grand confession without it. Like it literally would make no sense. People can talk about how she looks when she's around him, but that's because there's really nothing going on there. Like it's just simple. She was like that a whole 8 episodes last season with Damon because it was easy. When it got complicated is when her energy toward him kind of shifted. But
yeah.
and
Well,
her energy, she's kept this certain energy with him because she's trying to keep herself under control. If that
yeah.
makes,
Do you think that would complicate their relationship?
what do you mean?
Because it's so because there is so much to focus on with this maybe romantic relationship with Damon. Do you think that it would add to complications for their relationship, or do you think that it wouldn't, because they're so used to their relationship being what it is?
Hmm, no, I think what makes their relationship complicated is that they haven't been truthful and honest. Well, up until Damon.
Mm,
But I think what makes their relationship complicated is the avoidance of what's really going on there. So I think
I agree.
that once all those walls and boundaries are down, they can just move forward.
I agree. I agree. And again, because I there's this question is like focused on herself versus I think she's still focused on herself, which she's with Damon. And like I said, I made it very clear that I think
Mhm.
she genuinely prefers Damon. I think that she
Yeah,
confides in Damon more than she confides in anyone else not named Amara. I just think the story lends itself to picking Damon.
yeah. It it was it's there's a lot of things that happen that I think just go over people's heads.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, yeah, okay, she smiles and she has a happy face or whatever when she's talking to Lando. But what is she saying to him? Like, I need people to really think about what she's saying to him. Be-
What deep
Because
conversation have they had?
not,
Like
not even that, but they haven't had any. I mean, they did talk about briefly about the
that
anxiety.
hasn't been prompted by
Uh,
like a major life changing
yeah, you're
event.
right. Yeah, it's always life changing events, but I feel like the base of Damon and Simone, they were just talking to each other about stuff in the beginning.
Exactly.
But I think,
Simone and Lando had to be forced into a situation where they're talking about deep things, and then it was after it was recovering from that situation
literally,
where they were talking about deep things, and then
literally,
it was because things are awkward with Damon now. So, oh, maybe I should go talk to Lando about
yeah,
PKZ. Like, it's
it,
not. These are all things of convenience.
yeah, yeah. I think when her and Damon agreed that it was just a friends thing, even though they were both lying, she kind of fell back into that pattern of like, okay, like I just need
Exactly.
to move forward, and Lando was just there, like he was always just there. But when I
Fun little
said
distraction. Yeah.
though, yeah, definitely they don't really be having deep conversations in general, but also comparing it, and I've kind of just stopped doing that because it just doesn't even matter at this point. People are going to think what they want to think. But let's compare for a second. When Damon confessed his love to Simone, yeah, her friends had to kind of like get her to talk to him, but she knew she couldn't talk to him because she couldn't give him an answer at that time. But she still went out of her way to say, I'm considering what you said and I take it very seriously. When Lando confessed his feelings, the next episode, they had two interactions. The first time, she was trying to figure out the whole like how they could have the exhibition match thing. And he kind of hinted at the PKZ thing for her. And oh no, he said something to her like about how it's one like how she always figures things out. That's one of the things he loves about her. And she just kind of looked at him. She didn't respond. She didn't have anything to say to him about that comment. And then the next time after her probate, when he was telling her about how much she's helped changed him and he figured he'd do the same for her. He gave her those glasses and she was like, "And what is it that you want me to see?"
I was hoping
And
that you wouldn't even bring that up because I think that moment is so corny.
And no, but he was like, "What's right in front of you?" And she chuckled. Not once when that man was telling her how he felt about her did she respond in a way that indicated she felt something about him.
Right.
So, yeah, she can smile and chuckle all she want, but what is she saying is my point. Like she's not saying anything to him to tell him like, "Yeah, I think I kind of want you too." Like it's just okay, cool. You said what you said. Cool.
Right.
Like
Right.
it just
To that point, it's I think if she were to choose, let's say what we think is going to happen doesn't necessarily happen. If she were to choose Lando, and we think about what where the storyline is going, I because of what you exactly said, she chuckled like I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but Simone, I don't think she does well in situations where she can't fully explore all aspects of herself. And I know that she keeps herself guarded for sure, but she also, even with that guardedness, she also is very open and very vulnerable at times with people that she trusts the most.
mhm.
And so I just don't see her being able to do that with with Lando, because I just don't think that she sees him in that light. I
She does
don't think
she does not.
I I don't think she's that comfortable around him, to be
No.
honest.
No, because there anytime. it just majority of the time when they have conversations about deep things, the initial contact, the initial like their initial point of contact is her avoiding telling him things. Like she doesn't want to talk to him about it. It's
And then he
usually it,
misunderstands her, and then they have a little
yeah.
mini argument, and then and
It,
then
it,
it's like, oh,
it
I'm sorry. That's literally their
yeah.
pattern.
It and it's usually it's literally Damon and Thea, but people don't want to see it because Lando's cute. I mean, Thea's nice looking, but they don't care. The girls don't
But
care
yeah,
about
it's just
that.
like that. He's he's
But
like a heartthrob, like Martin
yeah,
is, and
but
people on the internet love him. Yeah,
it's also like yeah, they have this. She doesn't really, and he doesn't, and he really annoyed me in 2A. He annoyed me a lot. I did give him a chance. Um, but I actually like people who don't like Damon's character don't care how he treats Damon. Like that doesn't matter to them. But I actually like Damon's character, so how he treated Damon mattered to me and bothered me. But I think also in his interactions with Simone, especially very early on, he, in my opinion, was very entitled, and he seemed like it felt like, what am I trying to say? When they okay, let's talk 205, when they had that little fun time and they were playing in the fountain, and he was telling her like, you're not going to be, you're avoiding your feelings about the bomb threat and you need to take care of yourself and blah 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 blah. And I felt like he didn't know her well enough to be telling her what she should be doing and how she should be doing it. And then in 207, when Layla came and she didn't want to talk about it after they left the place, she was just like, okay, if you want to work on this paper, we can do that. And he was like, seriously, you're not gonna tell me what happened with your friend? Like, she doesn't have to tell you. Like, why are you expecting her
right,
to tell you stuff? Like, y'all are literally just friends with benefits. Like, y'all have sex and y'all going about your business.
right,
And and even still, when she said something about like, oh, like Layla's with my ex, and apparently it's serious or whatever, he was like, okay, like you're mad, but she flew all the way here to tell you that. You don't know that Layla flew anywhere to tell
right.
Simone anything. And I just feel like he steps out of line a lot of times, and
Definitely,
people be like, no, Simone needs somebody to check her. Simone needs somebody to tell her about herself, but
which is very weird.
he don't be knowing what he be talking about. It doesn't matter if you as a viewer know Simone's all around story. Lando does not. And you need to separate, like, people need to be able to separate that. Like, he's speaking on things that he doesn't know about, and then he
And
gets
also, I
upset.
just don't like this idea of you needing to be with a partner that check. What is this obsession with you need to be in a relationship
No,
with somebody that checks you?
people want to
That's
be put
not that's accountability in a relationship is not that particular thing because it's this
yeah.
weird like sort of like I as an audience member need to be gratified by a man putting in quotation marks Simone in her place, and I just don't
Yeah.
like that
I
for
just
any of the
can't,
women.
like, I don't know. People aren't turned off by his attitude enough for me. I can't. I just it's
Speaking.
not cute. Like, you have a nice face, but for me, like, I mean, I like a man who looks nice, but it's got to be more than just like the physical aspect. Like, how you talk to me
Definitely.
matters. How you listen to me matters. And don't just be assuming stuff about me that you don't know. You literally only know me for a month. But I think
Yeah.
that also plays into it too. People don't realize the timeline because people be like, she better choose Lando, or because he's done this, this, and that. But I'm like, literally, they were
They've been
messing.
hanging out for like 2 minutes, 2 months, something like that.
Yeah,
Not
they were
even long.
messing
Yeah.
around for like maybe a month, and then she went online, and she won't even really messing with him like that. And I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't
But
get it either. To be frank, I don't get it either.
yeah,
I just think blew up on social media, and social media has a lot of groupthink, and that led to what we see today.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but also, we got this question about why the people that do know Simone a little bit better, i.e., Keisha, are all of a sudden pressed. And we talked about Nate earlier, but this time it's the question about Keisha, why she pressed about Damone when she was all for them in the beginning when trying to hook up with Cam. Here's my answer on this, and I'm gonna let you
Mm-hmm,
talk.
mm-hmm.
I don't care what Keisha thinks or what Keisha has to say. because Keisha to me after this season, let me be nice. She has a lot to work on. She has a lot to work on. She has her own stuff to worry about. So, frankly, she was going through a whole entire arc by herself for the entirety of the season. And she just wasn't in the hot space to say anything or comment on anything. So I think, once the show picks back up, she going just like Nate, right? It's gonna be a totally different opinion. And that was just to create some drama for the moment. But yeah,
Mhm.
what do you think?
So here's my thing with Keisha. Yeah, she did. She had her own arc. She was going through her own things, but she didn't really have much to say about Damon and Simone this season. Like
Yeah,
when you think
that's what I'm
about
like.
it,
Where's this coming from?
and when she did say stuff, it really wasn't negative. Like when Simone had mentioned that there was boy drama, Keisha was like, okay, just figure out if Lando snitched, and the thing with you and Damon will work itself out. Y'all are annoying like that. Like she literally was just like that. You ain't got to worry about Damon. Like that'll, y'all figured it out.
I'm like, did I miss something in the season finale? Did she say something negative about them?
No, she didn't say anything negative. She made a few jokes about like, oh, she made a joke like, if you choose Damon over Lando, does that mean you won't get the internship? But that was literally it. And then
Yeah, I'm like the only thing I remember is like
yeah,
that's called being Simone Hicks. So that again, it's sort of like
yeah,
joking and in jest and shading her about the situation.
but
But
I
still, I
think
maintain I'm not taking Keisha seriously right now. But go ahead.
yeah, but I think also when it comes to Damon and Simone, especially in season one, I think she just wanted Simone to be honest to with herself about what was going
For
on.
sure, for
Like
sure.
that's literally all it was. She wasn't anti them, or well, I guess this person thinks she was pro them or whatever. But she just wanted them to be honest. And then I think when Damon was finally honest with Simone this season, she wanted him to. She was the one that was like, "You can't just leave him hanging. Go talk to him." Like so, I think another reason why they had Nate have that conversation with Simone about putting like her feelings on pause was because Keisha isn't a character that would have said any of that.
Right.
She would have been like, "Go get your man," because Keisha's very like straight to the point. Like, go do what you
I
got.
actually think, yeah, in comparison to Nate, Keisha's much more Team Simone, and I think that comes out a lot. Is that she truly is, I think, more Team Simone than Team Damon or Team Lando.
Yeah. So I think she was just kind of like waiting. They were just playing until like there's a decision that needs to
Yeah,
the finale. Like when it came
it's a
down to
plot point. Yeah,
everything, they were just like playing into that. But I don't think Keisha
feels
was.
any type of way.
Yeah, like I don't think she was ever anti them. She just like say what you got to say and make your decision. And Nate,
Is a different story.
messy to the end, but yeah, I
Messy to
hope.
the end. Messy to the end. The last question I got for you, and to that point, make that decision. If you were writing Simone, who would you pick and why? I already know who you would pick, but why would you pick Damon?
Because he's her person.
Woo!
It's literally it's as simple as that.
10
They
out of 10, no notes.
Yeah, people be on Twitter like when went back when the season was still airing, but
Right.
they would be like what makes like Damon a better option, what makes Lando a better option, blah blah blah. Like simply they wrote Damon to be
Who
for
Simone wants? Who
yeah,
Simone wants?
but not even just that, but it's just like they wrote his character for her, and I mean they write Lando's character in support of Simone's storylines. But at the end of the day, like Damon and Simone have something deeper.
Right. But I
And
feel like even for the people that think that Lando, for some reason, understands her better,
he
or
doesn't.
whatever, but he doesn't. But even for the people that think that, does Simone like? Let's to your go back into what you said. Let's listen to the words that are coming out of Simone's mouth.
Yeah.
Does she want this man?
But also, he doesn't understand her because if he understood her, he would have known that he could just give her space. He just needed to give her space to make her decision.
Right.
He standing outside of her classroom. He was standing outside of her classroom. Then, of course, nothing wrong with him congratulating her at her probate or anything like that. But the entire time, it just kind of seemed like he was
He
trying to
was
convince her.
pressed for an answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he was trying to
He was
convince
thirsty.
her something or like trying to get a response out of her. I mean, he literally, and they literally hinted at it twice with the things he said. The first time they had their interaction in the finale, he was like, "You're missing the options that are right in front of you." And then after the probate, he was like, she asked what he wanted her to see, and he was like, "What's right in front of you?" Like he was always hinting at something. But
Give me an answer. Give me an answer.
Damon literally said what he said, meant what he said, and went on about his business because he knew that she was just going to do with that and needed to take her time, like as she pleased. And
Right.
I don't think people understand if they think Lando gets Simone, then they don't get Simone because
Yeah. Simply by the fact that his confession ended with, whatever your choices are respected, but the choice is yours, I think speaks to who Simone is and what Simone values. And to be honest, I would change, a pacing of it maybe if I wrote the story, but I don't think in terms of this couple, I could write it any differently than what it is because I think they have made it so clear that they're each other's person. Um,
yeah.
so I definitely would obviously have it be Damon, and I truly still do think that it is Damon.
I think had they written the season differently, like let's just say they kissed and then they were like, okay, we're just gonna be friends, lying again or whatever. If they never had Damon follow up and express his love for her, I could see her picking Lando. But they didn't write it that way.
Right.
They kind of, I mean, they could go with Lando, but it just wouldn't be consistent with what they've been saying to us. There's also like other things that I don't think people realize, but Nate and Keisha.
I think what you said is just wouldn't be consistent.
Yeah. But also, her friends don't bring Lando up. They never brought Lando up until it came to Damon and her making a decision. She don't care about him like that. She don't talk to her friends about him. They don't ask about him. Her friends don't even ask about him. What does that tell you?
Well, I have no answer to that because I agree. I think that's a great place to wrap up because I mean, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? That's how we that's how we end this Damon season 2 journey. No, it was dope having you on.
I appreciate it. I'm waiting on my
I
time.
love how you just like went in on Lando on the West Coast.
He's not.
But yeah, we've been trying to do this for a minute, so I'm glad we finally got to do it.
Yeah. Hopefully, we can do it again for season 3.
Yes, definitely we're gonna do it again for season 3 if you're willing to come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for listening, and stay tuned for when the strikes are over. And yeah, we get to season 3 in 2024.